Should we make a motion to censure?
Okay, we're live.
Okay. Well, let's. Okay, while we're ready for that, let's do a quick intro around the table. I'm Sean Means. How are you?
Yeah, who are you with?
Yeah, I work for Dell. We're in PTL.
Tell us something about yourself. I'm Scott, CM and I work here at Enterprise. I work on helium, Marcus Rowe. Eric Barney, working with Rowan. Carl, basically, I'm just trying to sort that. Gerald, I'm part of the storage team. I'm very much on their PW block. Community, I think it is.
I'm Gerald McBurdy. I work on openstack on power solutions, RBC.
I'm Knight. I work for NetApp in Raleigh. That's what I'm related to here. Ben Swartzlander. I'm Patrick East, Future Storage. Yeah.
Sort of there.
I am Karthik from Intel, from the openstack Innovation Center in San Antonio.
I'm Matt. I work for Dayterra, which is just a startup in Silicon Valley. That's where I'm based.
And all up with Wildfire based here Boulder.
Try it. John Griffith, Wildfire. Boulder's actually. Mike Perez, OpenStack Foundation.
Yeah.
Jay Brains, IBM.
Bill Nelson, currently at IBM.
I'm Walmart. I'm currently at HPE. Probably not much for long.
All right. Welcome to the room. I just want to find great being here. I want to make sure everyone, if anyone watches this, this is open to everybody. So it doesn't matter if you haven't been yet. Awesome having people here. I took the topics that we put in the planning with that and just tried to put some logic to them, but this is flexible. If we find a topic that we need to add that goes well with something else that we're already talking about, we can add it in there. We need to move things. There's really just a couple kind of constraints. Tomorrow, I think it is at 11 o'clock. We're meeting with Nova, so that's set. And then we have a few international people that come, but we're going to try to do right away in the morning. At the active activation 1 year, Orca is actually in a meeting right now, so on quality is 4. We'll try to talk loud. So I guess just to get people talking and going without being too serious, let's talk about the logo.
Quick question.
Get the important stuff first.
Is the value not much bridge the source of the sound?
The source of the sound is this little guy right here, right now. We tried to do Uber conference, and I couldn't. Neither of us could get Uber conference to work at all.
Okay.
So we're using this little USB guide, not the Polycom.
Okay, so if I can at least keep it near Sean and we can try to pass it around.
Hopefully I don't have to talking all the time.
No, I know, but if people are talking,
Yeah.
especially if it's not.
Hello.
Yeah, right.
So soft spoken.
If it's not working well, I can also dial in on the number, and I've got your national number as well. So.
Probably a good idea, I think. Because everyone is saying the sound quality is kind of boring here now.
Well, Mikkel says that he can understand Sean, so.
Yeah, I think we just got to
I
be
think
near
you
this
just got to
one.
be cognizant that if you're way over there and you're not talking loud, this is over here. So it's always that way with the public comment.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Right.
Much better.
Much better. All right. So the logo thing, yeah, they contacted me a while ago. The whole idea is they want to get some visual consistency across OpenStack projects so that you know, that everything, it looks like it is, OpenStack is one thing and not this scattered thing with all kinds of stuff that doesn't look like it goes together. And they did point out right away that, yes, well, they said they especially wanted to talk to us because we already do have a logo. It's a very good, strong visual logo. And so,
And it's recognized.
yeah, yeah.
Maybe the most recognized logo in OpenStack.
I won't make any
We
claim.
can't use it.
Can we put a creature on top of it?
Small insect.
A little Pikachu looking through the
Yeah.
cinder blocks. Yeah.
Mythical creatures.
So they're willing to see if there's something they can do with that to make it fit in with the new styling of all the logos. But if we can pick an animal or natural thing, whatever, they'll work with the designers to see what fits. So I don't know if everything else is an animal and then we have the cinder block, that might be kind of strange, but it fits us so well. So that's kind of the hard part about it. So,
So they're going with animal theme?
animals or natural plants.
Maybe something like a tortoise that has a cinder block version.
I had that idea too.
Cinder blocks are great.
It does say can't be imaginary animals.
Yeah.
A small mouse sitting on something.
Ooh, that would work. Yeah.
Pixel size now.
So I think I actually had an Etherpad somewhere.
Yeah.
If I can find
You're
it
back
again.
in the, it's the page right there.
Hmm?
Like you're not showing the typing of it.
Is it typing?
Well, it's
on the room?
spot for some reason.
Yeah. There we
Okay.
go.
Yeah. Hopefully Etherpad doesn't go out on
Oh.
us. Yeah, anyone know where I had that Etherpad for logo?
Cinder dash mascot.
It's right there. Under logo discussion.
Oh, you did. Okay. Okay, right click.
Well, a volcano itself shoots out cinders.
Yeah. No, it's.
Yeah,
And there are some volcanoes.
that might be too close to Inkscape.
Is that the logo?
Yeah. Yes, it was.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, let's do a whale with a cinder block on its back.
It also can sing with any other.
Yeah.
Is there a list of those?
If you know open source projects, when somebody said a well for Docker, so I think you would want other stack projects.
Yeah, that's what I was.
Yeah, there's somewhere they're
I
registering.
don't think that people, I mean, I've been seeing on the mailing list some discussions of what
I think there was somewhere that we could register what we want.
but I actually meant outside of perfect well. So basically, like the O'Reilly books have taken everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, thinking animals was probably not a good idea. Yeah. No, I told them this in the discussion. And they're like, oh, well, now I was like, oh, Postgres, Hadoop.
Yeah, I like the elephant never forgets, but yeah, there's a lot out there. White dog, this is kind of a nice tie-in. Volcanoes, mythology.
Yeah.
Black widow. Spiders. That's the whatever.
That's the type of devilly thing.
Yeah.
This is what I think of when I think of stuff.
Over on the scene.
Right.
Yeah.
You have a plant holding a cinder block atlas style.
Can we just add a face to the cinder block?
Right, yeah.
Well, isn't like a the kind of rectangle shaped rock in its natural happens?
We're just a rock.
Yeah. Cindy the lobster?
Just a cinder block with some animal sitting on it.
Yeah, can we get away with that? How hard is the like animal pool?
I think if we just remove and say no, and then like assign us a little bit of where
They said that they will automatically assign logos for people who don't pick.
Or
if we pick one that they don't approve.
I think the only thing that they're really worried about is just any legal issues of like branding or anything. So, I mean, I have to imagine to like some degree, right? There are animal logos like right?
Yeah.
So as long as it's not like a blue elephant head with white outline, I'm pretty sure we're going to be okay.
Yes.
So.
I don't have them up there yet.
So are you asking if we just stick with the cinder block and get assigned the?
So one thing branding people like is, if the logo sort of works well, like as an outline. I mean, the cinder block really is a logo maker's dream as far as recognizable, easy. You can do different things with it.
What's the history of the logo again?
Yeah, where did that come from?
K-Mill and our working salt fire too.
No. I wondered where that came from.
Is it all safe and legal to use? Has there ever been any controversy about what we already have?
We copyrighted it, and every one of you that has put it on a laptop or on a slide deck now knows that's one. I cannot confirm or deny that.
I mean, if it's okay to use, would the strategy be to use it if we could? If we get stuck with this sort of no way you can't, then have a fallback.
That's kind of what I feel. I'd rather we stick with the cinder block, but if that really doesn't work out, or they can't make it work with the other logos, it'd probably be good to have something that yeah.
Right.
So, Sean, what did Penny Joy exactly tell you with the cinder logo, the current cinder?
No, let me see if I can find her email.
If we can add an animal to it, then we'll get rid of it.
Yeah, I don't know if that.
Frankly, I don't care. I mean, if we get rid of it.
I'd be sad to see it go, but
Yeah. So, is there anything on the list that people like?
yeah, maybe we should start ranking these, or.
An additional one that might not use the cinder block itself, or included, maybe two sheet solid cloth.
Oh, stop. But there's a screensaver project. It's called Electro.
Did someone say in the IRC that Moose is taken? Someone took Moose.
Yeah, I want to move. Awesome.
Oh, the household, that's.
Just do black bear or grizzly bear, or whatever we saw yesterday.
Yeah.
Well, that is.
Something.
That's not good
Yes. Okay.
Do some kind of IRC voting, or
Well, I mean, we can, the list that we have right now, we can go through it and be like, this already exists, elephant.
Here's the actual email. Where there was the email. Yeah. We're asking project teams to choose a mascot to represent their logo. If a dozen logos in use, they look very different. Since your team is already using a logo and we think that Cinderblock is smart and strong, we thought your team might want to keep it. As a compromise, we suggest you select a mascot, and then we'll ask the illustrator to potentially work the Cinderblock into the mascot illustration.
Okay.
We want to do everything possible to support that while also working to give all the projects a cohesive look. Yeah, so something.
They also say a natural feature such as a mountain or waterfall.
Yeah.
It doesn't just have to be an animal.
Animal,
water
fish.
flowing through the cinder.
a garden with a cinder block in the middle of it.
Waterfall.
Someone put snake woven around the cinder block. And,
A Zen garden. Hey, that's up to the illustrator. What if it's a mountainside with you can have a hexagon center for the cinder block.
No, but your team is.
Yeah. What an eagle flying, holding a cinder block.
dropping it on.
Yeah.
Dropping it on
Oh yeah, that's awesome. Nice.
What was the volcano one, Sean, that you looked up? I was going through it.
Oh, that's a conflict. Inkscape. Okay, so any animal, any ideas here that people particularly like? Maybe put a +1 next to it.
Yeah, I like the volcano.
The white dog. Feeling up.
There's no white dogs.
We could do. Obviously, if you have to explain it to people, it's not a very good logo.
A shark jumping a cinder block?
How about a white dog urinating on
Dalmatian.
Putting up the data center fighting.
Yeah, pretty much.
I kind of like the white dog because it actually has something behind it.
No one will ever know.
Yeah.
That you're going to be too close to David Down.
Yeah.
Well, but it's going to be close to something.
You've got a white dog on the back of your computer.
I think it's okay if it's the same animal.
Yeah. I think
Can't trademark.
we're going to have a really hard time if we cut out all. More like a husky type.
Yeah.
I don't like any of them.
I like the volcano for that.
Only a few votes so far. Yeah, you could vote for multiple.
Yeah.
But is that a negative connotation of our product?
What?
Volcanoes, like things blow
it's going to blow up. Yeah,
So
I thought about that.
Bonfire.
you can't use that anyway. So that would be, so there is a source file for it uses a volcano.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know their logo.
Yeah.
When you have no idea what you don't know.
Curious. You have it or they do.
Block lobster.
Oh, the blocks.
Block lobster.
I could have a different volcano.
Yeah, their cinder has a volcano
Volcano rabbits.
and some big giant blob.
Anything Gorka.
Do we have a timer for this discussion?
Yeah. Okay, Gorka is ready. Yeah, just vote. I guess I'll try to pull out the ones that have the most votes, and yeah.
I mean, it seems like I could see ways that we could integrate an eagle with the existing logo. You know, the white dog could be integrated potentially. I like those better. The snake could easily be integrated, but I don't think that it represents as well.
Yeah. Well, keep going on that. We'll move along. You know, now that everyone's justified the expense for their companies of why they got sent here. All right, let's move on. So
I can do some talking here, but
okay, yeah.
what really needs to, and how we do that.
If he's connected to the Hangout, we should be able to hear him, right? This goes both ways, doesn't it? Speaker too.
Make sure the output goes to that.
Okay.
All right. It's supposed to be going to that, so if he wants to unmute himself, try.
Can you hear me?
Yes. All right. So I don't know. You, Scott, you're on there too. Between the two of you, I don't know.
Yeah.
You want to take it away?
I just kind of thought it would be good to put that up there. Gorka's done all the work, but there's some of us starting to test HA patches, and if anyone has looked lately at the blueprint, which Gorka has listing them all, there's a lot of them.
Yeah.
And he started down this path at least last release, so it seems to going to be complicated and hard. I figured it would help to sit down and sort of discuss people maybe who are interested in signing up and or strategies for testing, and or is there a chunk of patches that could get in as a, you know, there's job distribution, there's some stuff around fuse locking, there's some stuff around recovery. If we can compartmentalize them and focus, I find it kind of hard to focus on them all because there's about 15 patches, so I think that's probably going to be true. So I guess what I was looking for is a project management level view of the HA patches and how can we move it forward efficiently so that we get some stuff in Newton, because I think Gorka is of the opinion it can't all get in. Dragging it out.
Yeah.
2 years instead of 1.
And in Austin, we did identify this as one of the priorities. So it'd be, even if we can't complete it, it'd be good to get as much time as we can Are there dependencies on these patches? Like one needs to go in first, or are these kind of just parallel activities?
So the way, Gorka, where's the print? You want to bring it up on that bottom line? Right, down.
This one?
I thought I had it, but now
I think that has a list of them all. Okay, which one?
Yeah.
Okay, the review one above that.
Okay.
But Gorka had a more structured list where it was categorized, and the last one on the list was the one that had all the dependencies. In other words, you could just pull in the last one. It pulls in all the dependencies.
So the problem for me is the same problem I have all along with these, is trying to review them is extremely difficult. It's very hard to figure out how they work together, where they work together, what's going on, what's necessary, what's not. And it's also really difficult to figure out what some of the code is doing, quite frankly, because there's some crazy shit being
frankly, I don't quite understand, or understand if it's really worthwhile. So I don't know how we fix that. I don't know how we address it. I don't know if we want to just do group reviews on this stuff while we're here.
That's probably not a bad idea. I feel exactly the same way you do. I started looking at some of the stuff and my head was swimming. I don't know what it was.
Yep.
That's how I have this conversation.
The other problem that I pointed out before too is I don't think there's a clear description of what problem we're solving exactly and how we're solving it. There's just a whole lot of code churn, in my opinion, and it's all probably really good and it's all probably the right thing to do, but I can't competently review it the way it is.
Yeah, you need a good code.
Like,
Were you saying something, Gorka?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that I don't know if everybody has read the specs. I try to keep them up to date with everything that we agreed in Austin and everything that I see while making the patches, so that after reading the specs, it's my hope that at least one can understand what we are trying to achieve with the code. If looking at the code and after reading the specs, one cannot see what I'm trying to do, it's clear that I did something wrong, either the specs or the code. Because with the specs and the code, one should be able to understand what I'm trying to achieve. So if...
Yeah, I think... so I'm trying to phrase it so that I make sure I make it clear that I think the stuff that you're doing is awesome, and I think you're doing a good job. I think you've put forth more effort and detail in the specs and in breaking the patches out and stuff like that than anybody ever does. So kudos on all that. I think it's awesome. The problem is like when I look at some of the things like the worker tables and stuff like that and try and figure those out, I didn't see, let me look in the spec again. Yeah, so I don't see how that ties in to the spec and what that's actually doing and what it's actually giving us. Does that make sense?
No, because actually in the cleanup specs, it should, I think it's even listed what the workers table does, what fields it has, what we use each field for, and things like that. So
maybe I'm looking at the wrong,
or maybe I linked the wrong spec. I don't know. Let me check.
So maybe actually I think I see the problem for me. So I'm going off of the BP that you have in the full spec, which points to the Mitaka spec. I suspect you've probably updated that.
Well, for the cleanup, I don't think I have. Oh yeah, it's in Newton now, but I think the change ID should be the same.
Okay.
So let me confirm.
Is there mention on this page that you're on here, Sean, of the database stuff?
Okay, the spec is the one that is there. I mean, in the data model impact, I mentioned the workers table, the fields, and everything. I don't know if there's missing some detail that I may have had to add or something, but.
Are you on? You're not on IRC at the moment. Yeah, you are.
Yeah.
There's what I'm looking at, and I got to that. I followed. I understand, but I got to that by following on this patch. If I go to this patch right here, and I follow the link to, I went to the blueprint, but let me go to the spec. So yeah, okay, so you have a spec and a blueprint, and they point to two different things. That's why. But my fault. See what I'm saying?
Okay, yeah. The generic is not pointing to the right. Yeah, I know what you mean. Yes, that's my fault. Yeah, so I should update this one probably. Yeah.
You do, in fact, as you said.
What? Wait, no, I think it's pointing to the right one. Yeah, it is pointing to a right one. The link you paste, if you go to cleanup, where it says specs, that's the latest spec.
Right, here's what I'm saying. Let me do this again. So if you click on the blueprint, this is why I don't understand why we have to have blueprints and specs. We should have one or the other. So go to that blueprint and then click on it. And click on the read full specification.
Yeah.
That takes you to a different spec. That's my point.
No, it doesn't take you to a different one. Okay. I have to make it easier for people to see how the different pieces were joined together. I created a generic spec that highlighted all the different specs, and then individual specs for each of the different problems we wanted to fix.
So the first one listed in the blueprint is the general one that covers everything, is that correct?
Yes, correct. So reading that one, you see I mentioned the different problems, the APA races, the manager logs, job distribution, cleanup, and then in proposed change, I list the different ones and specs to each of the descriptions.
Okay, so this is okay. So this is my problem then. I'll take care of it. I'll get myself figured out.
Yeah, and I want to make sure that if for some reason either the specs that I have right now or the code doesn't make any sense, like you read one and you don't understand what I'm doing something, you just put a comment like, I don't understand what you're doing here, or this is not clear, or whatever, and I will try to either make the code easier to read or put some comments in the parts that are not clear because they are more complicated or because they are out of context without the specs.
Okay. That's fair. Thank you.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it makes sense to try to bring things up and maybe,
Yeah, I think
interested people have a working group even to talk once a week and say, let's focus on this. And that way, people who are interested can put their efforts in then and there. Worker can be available. We figure it out. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, we fix. Get it merged. It's such a huge, complex, overwhelming thing. If we don't watch out, it's going to get done. Or work will get done for weeks and weeks, and then somebody who hasn't been jumps in, and then we have to go. So I think it's probably. I mean, that's Gorka's expectation. But if we don't watch out, nothing will get done in Newton. Nothing will get done in Otaka. Nothing. It's the most complex. We need testing around it. We need, more than just manual testing. We need, Tempest tests, jobs. We've started down that path. Michaela's been working on getting multi-node Cinder testing into Tempest because we'll want that for this. So we've been doing stuff. We've got sort of a testing working group that encompasses testing for HA as well as other testing that we want to do. So certainly, I think it would be necessary and a confidence builder to have testing going on even before we have all the fully plumbed tests.
I think the other thing that's probably worth figuring out is which bits of this are low impact and can be merged relatively safely, like the job distribution stuff. If you don't set the cluster ID, there's nothing at all. So that can be merged more easily than stuff that has a, moves RPCs around and has a high impact.
Yeah, exactly. And Orca, I assume you're really the one to guide us in some of that, where we can look at things that are less risk, and maybe even things, if there's anything that should get into the database changes early so that we don't have, upgrade issues when it does finally all merge. Like that might be a priority for Newton. I kind of flagged that in the Etherpad as maybe adding new columns is not harmful and would be good to get in, or I don't know the details, but that's probably something that would help guide us.
Is this a high priority for all vendors?
It is for us. I mean,
just out of curiosity, because I get asked about it quite regularly.
Yeah, it's enterprise quality HA.
Okay.
Cinder. Well, that's what they tell me. That's what they tell me.
Is it possible to get just a very, very brief overview of what it is?
So right now, if you can have one Cinder volume node managing each storage array. It can't survive an outage. So Cinder's not highly available in the sense of you can attach and detach volumes with one of your nodes down. So the goal is to have two Cinder volume nodes or more managing the same backend storage. One of the impediments to that is we have locks that live on the single Cinder volume node, and those locks are not shared. So one of the solutions involved shared locks. Another solution involved solving race separate category that Gorka's listed with patches to prevent you from needing these locks in the first place. One of the problems is this job distribution, where the messaging queue currently distributes jobs to various Cinder volume nodes. We want to now be able to distribute it to a cluster of nodes so that you can have this high availability. And then another category is the cleanup, so that when things go down, you figure it out, and when things come up, it has some smarts about how to manage in-flight transactions and things like that. Did I get that right, Gorka?
Yeah, perfect.
So that's why this is so complex, that there's a lot of different things. And some of the things like the API races, that's kind of, it's kind of needed but orthogonal, right? That's like, well, you got races, can we fix them? So maybe that's a subject that if you look at it, can you scroll? I think a lot of those are merged. Right at the bottom is the beginning of API races. So most of those, I think, already have been merged because there's some work in progress ones, but otherwise, those have been getting merged in. And so that's an example of what we want to do with the future stuff, right? Figure out things that in and won't break anything if they do or don't, or, you know, as Duncan pointed out, the job distribution stuff may be the next thing to look at because you kind of have to turn it on. If you put a cluster name in your cinder.conf, then you have a cluster, and if you don't, everything works as it does today. So maybe that's one of the things to take away from this, Gorka. Does that make sense to sort of?
Yeah, I will try to split set which patches can be merged with low risk, so we can start reviewing those. And the others, I think, will probably need to have actual automated tests. But I fear that for doing proper tests to the active stuff, we will need some kind of error injection mechanism in the test. Otherwise, we could be testing nothing, or, you know, if you just have active, but you have no way of breaking it wherever you want it or stopping it and knowing what's the status of the resources, I don't think we can do proper testing with active.
Has any of that testing work been started other than, or is really the first step just getting this multi-node Tempest going?
I mean, so I think I've just done manual testing of job distribution, and I know some of the Intel folk have done testing. Gorka, I'm sure, has done some. I think it's sort of, let's figure out how to even test this. Even what, you know, you can pull off a node and see what happens. You can look at the rabbit queues and see if it's doing the cluster queue and things are getting pulled off of it. So as far as, I think we kind of almost have to sit down. Maybe that's another thing to do with Gorka's help, is sort of a test plan saying how forget about automation. How would you, what do we need to do to test these various parts? And then once we kind of have that figured out, we can pick the low-hanging fruit on the automation. Some stuff can be tested fairly easy, right? And some is either difficult or needs a whole new thing in the infrastructure, like Gorka saying, fault injection. I don't know if we'll ever have that in Infra or Tempest. I don't know if people have tread that ground before and looked at fault injection as a testing pattern, or if somebody in Infra said, no way, we can't do this for some reason, or what. I don't know.
So they don't like negative tests and stuff in Tempest, right?
Right.
Tempest is supposed to be like
just
API validation.
But we can do that in our entry stuff and turn them on in whatever jobs we want.
So
a whole bunch of this is not going to be Tempest either.
Right.
Like, Tempest basically tests APIs. We need to do behavior testing, soap testing, long-running things that just aren't suitable for Tempest and probably aren't even suitable for the gate, that need to exist to be run periodically.
It does concern me a little, making this available to customers and users, and if they have issues, if we can't even figure out how to test it, how are we going to reproduce issues? And
this is a tough one. That's why it's also tough.
Okay, I will try to come up with a list of the tests I did manually. Like, for example, there are things that are easy, for example, to test that the cluster is working on certain operations. For example, for create, you just create two volumes, and you see that the host is filled with the different one each time. because they do a round robin on the topic queue. So if you have host 1 and host 2 and you request 2 volume creations, they will be issued to 2 different hosts from the cluster. So there are things that are easy to test.
And I think it might help if even just documenting what we've manually tested, at least to show this is what we've done and we think works well. So if someone comes with an issue, we can at least see what we've done and tell whether that's something we've even exercised or not.
Yeah. Well, we can automate some of that. We can script. We can our functional tests. They're ours. We can do lots of stuff there. That
So, I mean, to attempt to not hold this up behind testing, I mean, is it a reasonable expectation that we're going to be able to test all the permutations of this? I mean, it's not really reasonable, is it?
Well, I don't know. I think we can test. I mean, for starters, in the world of testing, you can't ever test everything. As things get sufficiently complex, you start getting this matrix, and people who do QA for a living know that you sort of have to pick what you're going to test. That's the same thing in the gate. We can't have a gate that runs for 100 hours, right? As you start adding more and more tests, it's like, whoa, we don't need to test every possible combination. So we need to figure that out as well. Sort of what's
If we can't test what we're trying to set up to accomplish with this, then
you can of course we can test it. The question is, can you test it in infrastructure in the gate? If not, how else can we test it?
I mean, I think each vendor is going to have to do some work.
Absolutely.
I mean, we have an environment.
Hold on, wait a minute. This needs to work against the LVM, against against the...
Well, absolutely, it's going to need to be tested in the gate. Well, sure it can. I mean,
LVM probably not going to be a target.
Unless we go in Eric and I can talk about it, unless we rewrite what we do the LVM.
We've talked about that as a possibility. We talked about using SAF as a shared backend between LVM, or we talked about what John said, which was to add some kind of interface so LVM could be sort of a standalone target, so that you can have 2 nodes pointing to one LVM. It's an issue, but I don't think it's not an insolvable issue.
Yeah.
So it's just so there's several facets to all this, right? There's how do we review all this code and tame all that complexity? What priorities can we use to help us figure out what can go in now? I mean, we did a good job with the API races. That was easy to say. This is not going to, it's going to help the project without HA, and it's not harmful in any way. And so we prioritized them and got them in. So we can keep moving forward with that, but the testing part is a whole chunk that needs to be figured out.
Would it help any? I don't think this exists yet, but whenever like our QE guys start figuring out how we're going to test it for our product, to have them kind of give us ideas and let us know what kind of stuff they're doing.
Well, absolutely. That's kind of where we are with HP, but I'm that guy really. Yeah. My QA is not going to figure that out. I got to figure it out.
Well, and this isn't close enough to landing for them to have done that yet.
Right.
At some point.
But conceptually, you know what to do. If you forget about the gate and the restrictions from infra, how are you going to test this? Well, you're going to have 2 cinder volume nodes pointing to some storage, and you're going to kill one, and you're going to make sure the other one still allows you to attach and detach, and then you're going to bring the first one back up and make sure it gets kind of clean and kill the other one. We know what HA is supposed to be, so we kind of conceptually know. That doesn't mean we solve all cases, and that doesn't mean it gets in the gate. But
I would say, since this is such a big, complicated feature, this needs to be tested in infra.
Well, I think we could test these things in infra. First off, we're trying to get 2 node cinder in. Then we need to figure out a way to have a shared storage backend for those 2 nodes.
Yeah.
SAP was a thought, and then John brought up this other possibility with LVM.
But SAP should work today.
Well, you could do SEF. You could even do NFS because that's
that was my first instinct, but that's.
I've tried NFS and it didn't work yet.
But it's a driver that's at least shaped right to be able to do this.
Well, and I can tell you that I'm gonna have to go down this path for what we're doing. So we'll start looking at it for the NFS forever.
Yeah.
It worked with NetApp somehow magically.
What did the HA part of the NFS?
Just the active. No, this was using ICE-CUS, the active NetApp. We have a cloud running set up that way, and I looked at it and went, dear Lord, how is this working?
It works for us too, by the way.
It usually works.
It usually works,
And that's the problem. That's the problem with testing too. We can do baseline testing.
So, can we, it seems like we're kind of rat rolling on this a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, there's a couple of things. First of all, there's a number of drivers that you can, if your users are well behaved, you can just turn it on and it just works.
Yeah.
Right. So that's fine. Obviously, we need to figure out how we're going to test it. I think that's going to come down to CIs and people actually testing it on their own. There's no way we're going to test all these things.
We need to do fault injection because it works most of the time. We need to make sure it works right when things fail, and if we can't figure out how that fails.
So quite frankly, even if that ends up being a manual process, I don't really care. That's the thing. It's fine.
I'm working on part of CI stuff for this. So we've got pure CI, we're running multi-node, like upstream, have this gate stuff, just that gate. All of instructions, running it with so anyone who's using like the upstream infra CI system, it's just a matter of like copy paste this thing into your job and it'll test it. Then we just need the tests to actually exercise it. But
My bigger concern of all this is going to be for those of us that are storage vendors when we have to deal with the distribution vendors. Because right now, I don't want to with all different test suite and the different tests that they run, the different expectations on how it should work and what it should do, and sometimes those expectations are not always correct. And 95% of the time, when we deal with whoever it is that we have to deal with on that side, they don't know shit about OpenStack. So it'd be interesting to see if while we're doing this, we could also come up with some ways to kind of come up with a better search process. Whether that's, hey, it's in tree, it's running, it's here in the gate.
That's always been my argument with a lot of these distributions, that they won't put you on their cert until they've done the testing.
Well,
but we've already tested because we're in the tree.
I'll tell you why all that happens. Because our QA doesn't contribute to OpenStack. We would love to, I personally want all the tests I create and all the testing infrastructure to be upstream in Cinder Tree, because then you get to run what I run and there's no discrepancy.
Yeah, but I think you're missing my point of this is so this is my long way around back to the CI discussion. What's the point of having the CI if all of the distros are going to make me go through and jump through all their crazy hoops and everything else anyway? So
he's not bad.
We're
no, it's not him.
Yeah, it's somebody in this room.
Well, actually,
but the point is it's just creating triplicate work or more for no real value.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. A lot of the people you do end up dealing with on those distro sites really have no understanding of what Cinder even is. You know, they've gone down the whole, we understand Ceph, and that's all we care about.
Upstream tests that validate things, make everyone confident, so that I'm running what you're running.
But my point is then people like you and Eric and whoever else, not Eric, I don't expect it. My point is, but then somebody needs to go back to the distros, the Helion guys, the Mirantis guys, the Red Hat guys, and say, hey, look, this stuff is tested.
Well, that's what I do when I get a bug that says, you know, this doesn't work. I say, well, I just ran it upstream and it works. So the problem is, you know, you got to go get those 3-par guys and hit them up.
But that's what's happening, and that's what I'm talking about.
But if it works upstream and it doesn't work with 3 bars, doesn't that indicate it's a 3-bar problem?
No, I think you're missing my point.
No, the tests they do in these distros are exactly the same as the upstream tests. Why would you?
Download, install Tempest, run Tempest.
Yeah.
Why am I doing
with
this?
some other framework.
With respect, though, that's not the only tests we do.
Duncan, I'm not accusing anybody of anything, and I'm not generalizing, saying that's the only thing you do. I'm saying that is how some of the distros work.
I think a lot of it is because of gaps in the testing.
Yeah.
Well, I think there's also a mentality that some of the distros put their own patches and their own fixes in, because what they're actually shipping are previous releases of OpenStack with patches from fixes from master. A lot of them do that, and then so they think they need to requalify everything.
Well, and they probably do, but they should have either
It
they
should be
should have
their
to do
problem.
it, or I shouldn't have to do CI and do their
Yes,
certification.
exactly.
Because there's no point.
There's no point in it.
There's no point.
Okay, well that sounds like something worthy of discussion, but it is straying a little bit. So well, that's okay. No, it's a good topic, and I'm interested. I mean,
I think it comes back if we can do good testing or some testing for HAs so that we can show it is fine here, then at least in those cases where there is a discrepancy, we can point back at differences that they're doing, whether they're patching previous versions or, you know, we can say, well, we know it worked here, so
right. I mean,
not.
So can we just pick one back end and get a multi-node test put into the infra?
that's the plan, and that's kind of underway as far as Mikkel, are you online? He's been working a bit on it.
Well, should we not target a fake drive first, just to go after all the race kind of stuff and be an easier baseline to start with?
Yeah, I think a lot of stuff. So when I started doing manual testing, you know, I just had 2 nodes with LVM, and they weren't synced because it's not shared. But you can still see that the .job distribution works, and you can't test the data integrity, but you can certainly test that a volume gets attached and you shut that down. The volume still can attach. You can shut down the second node and bring the first one up, and so
You can't test against the same volume.
you can't test against the same volume. You can't test against the same. But so you can obviously start with some fake driver stuff. I mean, that's part of the conversation I just wanted to do right here and now. Is sort of like what we seem kind of stuck with all this. The testing is a huge chunk. The reviews is a huge chunk. I guess
Testing is a huge chunk, and it's important. I think what's important first is to get the code reviewed and get it merged. Because the reality is, we can have that code in place and have it there, and we don't have to be saying we support active-active. We just need to get the shit merged and make sure it doesn't break the existing paradigms and that things still work. And then we can figure out as we go how to tackle actually supporting AA. And I guarantee you, you'll merge all those patches, and it's not going to just work out of the gate for all 80 drivers. It's not. Right?
Sure.
So there's going to be work that's going to be involved for everybody. Everybody's going to have to work on it. I mean, that's just how it's going to be.
And until we get that code in there, we won't get to that
Exactly.
point to figure
well,
it out.
I agree with you, but I think that there's got to be some testing work parallel because people aren't going to be very comfortable merging stuff in if there's no way to have some kind of testing.
What I'm saying is, I'm saying that you will not have active support until somebody writes a test for it. See the difference?
Put the code in.
So you put the code in, but the code's there it's just there so for futures. It's just the first step. For now, all we care about is that the existing regular use cases for Cinder still work.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah,
And then when the first vendor has that customer that really wants active and thinks it really matters, guess what? Hot potato. Now it's yours.
Well, I'm fine with the idea of getting stuff merged in, but I think I personally will be working on the testing because that's my job. I mean, that's so the testing will be ongoing, and I think the stuff we talked about, like getting input from Gorka, people sharing their test strategies, working on the manual stuff, building anything we can automated, that's just going to keep going. Well, you can pull in a patch right now. You can pull in the last patch in the series, which pulls all the dependencies. You can have job distribution in a cluster, and it will distribute the jobs, and you're testing it. I mean, I am testing this right now. I have tested it, and so have Intel and other people. So
I like what John's getting at, though, that it would be really good to be able to start from the point of, we know that these 8 things were broken, and we've at least reasonably tried to fix, these categories. And
yeah, well,
it gives a good starting
I like
point.
the idea of at least making sure we don't break what we have right now.
Yeah, yeah.
I just want to move forward.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean,
Well, and I hate.
screwed Gorka over for the last year.
Right. And every time we come back a little bit late with sort of, ooh, this, I never noticed this before, but this is an architectural thing that needs fixing. Then he's got to go back and fix it all. So.
We talk about it, then we go away.
Right. So
Come back later.
I hate to seem obsessive about like meetings and working groups, but I kind of propose that people who are interested in this, maybe we can talk about this once a week.
And I think back to your other point, breaking this apart into smaller areas for people to focus on.
If we meet up once a week and say, hey, we're all supposed to be looking at these 3 patches, and we discuss stuckness and prod people and get those 3 in, and then you move on to the next 2 or 3 or whatever. I think that's going to help a lot.
Electric cattle prod or
Whatever we got. Any thoughts on that, or anybody think that sounds like a big pain?
Cinder logo is a cow, and we have cattle prods.
now we're getting somewhere. All come together.
Does OSIC do anything with HA or any interest in HA? Yeah.
No one's going to be able to hear you.
So we have HA logs in the main manager, but we need to get it in the drivers that still use legacy logging, and there is the issue with how we approach that. And at the first time, we just replaced, because most of the drivers use remote FS methods to support logging. So we replaced just the functions used there. But that means we change in all the drivers at the same time, and we cannot gradually test whenever something's broken for this specific driver or not. So the latest solution was to create some temporary class replacing all the locking mechanism in remote FS, and then each driver, whenever it starts to support HA, it will switch to the new class, and then after all the drivers switch to the new class, we can put something like cleanup patch that reverts back to the Arduino. So that's the only remaining work with locking.
All right, well, Gorka, do you have anything to say at this point?
Well, I didn't hear very well that last part about the drivers and the classes. I don't know if I understood it correctly. The idea would be for the drivers to move to a different class once they are active.
Yeah.
Was that it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I think we don't really need that, because there are some. My idea was to write something to help driver developers start preparing their drivers right now for active. Like this is what you can do with upstream patches. This is how you can run dev stuff with them. So you can start testing the basic mechanism and see if it works, if it doesn't work. Explain the 3 different kind of logs they can have, depending on their needs. So whenever we get to actually merge the active stuff, they can be ready. and we could keep like a list of drivers that say they are active, but in general, there is no real difference between a driver that supports it and one that doesn't.
I think there is a significant difference because drivers use logs, and some of these logs aren't converted to to use tools yet.
Yeah, that's what I mean. But if a driver doesn't require internal logs and it only needs in-process logs, for example, or in-process logs, then the driver is ready. So if the driver maintainer checks it against the patches and feels comfortable that it works, I don't think that moving it to a different class will make any difference. Because
but Shimon was talking about remote FS drivers. So remote FS snap driver, that class, has some methods that are using local logs. We want to switch them to use tools logs, but in the same time, Quobite and Scality drivers are also using the same remote FS snap class. So now when I want to switch Gluster FS driver, for example, I don't want to touch Quobite and Scality driver because I'm unable to validate if they will be working with tools. And it's even worse in case of Samba file system and the Windows Samba driver, which are deriving from the same class. So that's the problem Shimon was explaining.
Okay.
Let me find the exact patch. So I'm posting the patch on IRC.
Yeah, no, I understand what you mean. Yeah. I thought this was meant for all drivers. That's why I didn't understand it.
Yeah, so guys, if we can agree on a solution to that, do we want to switch all the drivers at once and worry about breaking them later? I don't think so. Or how do we approach switching them to use tools logs one by one?
Look, I think it should be up to them. If they want to do active, then they need to switch, right?
Did you hear that?
Yeah, but the problem is that if we will change the remote FS snap class that is using local logs, then we will affect some of the proprietary drivers.
But okay, so if we create, like Simon was saying, a new class that uses the tools, and then each driver that is ready to do active extends from that one, that's the approach that was suggested, right?
Yeah, that's. Oh no.
Yes.
Paste.
You have the basic driver and that everybody is extending from, and a new one that is active.
Yes. So that's exactly how Shimon approached it, and I think Eric was opposed to that.
I don't know if I was opposed to it so much as just didn't quite figure out what all was going on there yet. It was a while ago. I'll have to look at it again.
Okay. There's another possibility, and that could be that we include the tools configuration instead of in the default section, in the driver section, so you can specify which kind of locking mechanisms you want for each driver. So if you have one driver that uses local logs, you configure tools for that driver to use local logs. And if it uses DLM, you just change the tools configuration for that specific driver. That way.
Yeah, so the problem with that is that I am not 100% sure that the file driver in tools is exactly the same, locking in exactly the same way as the Oslo concurrency file log.
It's quite similar. Both of them don't preserve a queue order. They try to acquire the log with a small timeout, and then once that timeout runs out, they run a loop and keep trying. So that's why the order is not preserved. But
Yeah,
they are similar,
I get that.
both of them.
I just don't want to risk breaking any proprietary drivers by mistake, because we haven't thought of some difference between locking.
Well, I think we know what the requirements are.
But the only difference that you will have is the order in which the methods are executed. If they are called exactly at the same time, and they have to actually be called exactly at the same time, or both be, both be waiting for the same thing. You will just change the order, but that also can happen right now.
That shouldn't be a problem for what any of these drivers are actually, why these locks are in here.
Yeah, that's what I think.
Okay, so I think we can agree that creating a new class and then switching the drivers one by one to derive from the new class is a fair idea. So we just need to revisit the patches, I think.
Yeah, I don't know if the other idea of having a specific per driver tools configuration could be easier or not.
I'm not sure we need that, do we?
No, that could be a solution for this case.
It can be a solution for the DLM work, but not for the Oslo concurrency to tools switch.
Yeah, you switch. Okay, if you switch to tools that is basically doing the same thing with logs, you just have to do the being able to configure the different drivers in different ways for the logging. Because Oslo concurrency and the tools are basically the same for files.
Okay, so that's like two planes of possible risks. So yeah, your remark makes sense, and probably it would be good to have driver-specific configuration.
But I really don't mind either way. I just wanted to point out that there's this other solution, and that maybe we should look at all the drivers that are affected and see which one would be easier.
Is it just the ones that inherit from remote FS snap?
I think so.
Okay.
Not that many.
It's 5, according to that diagram. All right. I guess that's a conversation that just to have with the maintainers of those drivers.
Yeah.
Bring them in.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think myself that this would benefit from like a weekly sync up.
Yeah. So action items you want to organize.
I'll work
those?
with Gorka. We'll make sure that's time that works for you, Gorka, and I can sort of help deal with the administrative part of that if that's okay with you.
Yeah, that could be great.
We'll pick a time, I'll post it, and we'll just meet and try to move things forward in sort of a...
And Gorka, you were going to try to point out the one.
I lost the audio right there. I just heard you're going to, and that's all I heard.
Hey,
You're
yes.
gonna fix everything.
He already has, so I don't know.
Yeah. No, you were going to create some kind of list or ranking of patches that we can look at that are less risk that we can get in right away?
Yeah, I'm going to say, because they are all dependent one on another, they are all the patches changed, so they can easily be tested. So I will say which one is the last one that I feel comfortable to merge without more tests and more reviews, like things that will, like Duncan said, that will probably not affect the rest of the code.
Okay.
So one big patch in the chain is the refactoring of create, save, and destroy OVO methods. So this is a little controversial to me. And I think also John had similar concerns.
Okay, well, I think for now, let's make that if we could just get the info that what isn't controversial, so that we can keep on those, and this controversial stuff. I mean, it would, you know, maybe a miracle would happen where we actually are talking about that in a few weeks before Barcelona, but probably not, right? I mean, we can at least get the groundwork of that controversy just out there as far as the next few Cinder meetings, but let's not worry about the most difficult thing right now.
Yeah, having the same conversation. So if we...
Right, that was my concern. Is
okay.
Yeah, from my perspective, having that out of the chain would make merging the chain easier. I know, Gorka, it would be hard because you are depending on that patch in your, I think, in your cluster object, I guess.
Yeah, I'm depending on that in a couple of things. Not only in probably, and I think it's only on the cluster one. Yeah.
Job distribution. Is this update version objects with cluster object?
Yeah, but that's the one that needs the refactor of create, save, and destroy.
How hard it would be to make it independent for now, until we will be sure that we want this, want to consolidate, create, save, and destroy OVO methods.
I would have to change the update OVO instance on destroy method calls. Cluster job distribution patch that has the version objects, and probably those two would be the only ones that need to be changed, I think.
Sorry, I've lost audio for the moment.
Sorry?
I've lost sound for a moment.
Oh, okay. So basically, I would need to change a couple of patches. The one that the update version object with cluster object, and the one that fixes the destroy method in version objects.
Okay, so does it sound like a lot of work or not to you?
Well, compared with what I've already done, it's no work at all.
Okay, so from my perspective, it would make me a lot. It would make a lot easier to review the patches that are actually related to active and not the refactoring.
Okay.
I think we can revisit refactoring maybe in the next release, because it's a big patch and well, not everyone agrees on it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. But by the way, that's one of the smallest patches I have in the series. But okay, I understand the controversy anyway, which is the important part. Okay, I will work on removing it from the chain and updating the other patches.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have some actions out of this, so at least hopefully we can move forward. Probably move on. Anyone has any major things to say about it? Okay. We take a break?
5.
Yeah. 5, 10. 5. Say 5, then it'll be 15.
Yeah. So this is all a shared area. You guys wander. There's bathroom, Starbucks, everything, whatever. The cafeteria's open all day.